Welcome in to another episode of the Just Basketball Show. I am Brendon Kleen. That is Chris Manning. Thank you for listening wherever you're finding us. We're on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. If you're finding us for the first time, hit follow, hit subscribe, give us a nice rating or review. And if you are on YouTube, drop a comment with your thoughts on our main topic today, which is going to be veteran standouts. These guys, and there are a lot of them, Chris, who are having these breakout seasons late in their careers, in this new era of offense and explosions every night and crazy scoring. We'll get to that in a second. I want to run through some NBA news with you to start here. And I have a game. Are you ready?
I love a game. Let's do it.
Okay. I didn't prep you that I was going to do it this way, so I will explain it to you and the audience. We are going to do a game called What Matters Most, all right? And I have a few options for you. Mm-hmm. And we can talk, you can interrupt me, we can talk through them as we go. We're not going to include Ja Morant. We'll get to that in a second in detail. But these are some of the games and headlines that have come up in the past little while. We have Michael Porter Jr. and Zach Collins, as well as Trey Lyles and Brook Lopez choking one another. Mm-hmm. All right, that's option number one. Does that sound good, Chris?
Sure.
We have Boston allowing 54 points in the paint and 59% shooting in the restricted area to the Houston Rockets and losing a game that they should not have.
My alarm, but my ding 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 ding. That's what we're starting there. I don't care what else we're going to talk about. We're starting there.
Okay. All right. Tell me what you think, because I just caught up on this game and it was the worst version of the Celtics. And it's not unexpected, but when it's Houston, I think it's bad.
I think it's okay right now to be worried about Boston. I think it's okay to this tease is a little bit ahead, but I would put Milwaukee ahead of them in the East right now. Philly, I think, is certainly playing better at the current moment. And I do think Boston, when you get to the playoffs, the way they play, the way their defense works, if they're healthy, should work. But it's a lot of just one shot or one pass and nothing now. I don't think Marcus Smart's been as good this year. And you lose to a team like Houston. And this is the part of the NBA season where it can get weird. Teams looking to the playoffs. Yeah. Guys are taking nights off. Things get a little wonky. But the process just doesn't feel quite right to me for Boston. It just, something feels off in that water right now, and it makes me look at them just when you lose to Houston like that, and you just Houston's actively trying to lose. Tillman Fertitta said this on a local TV interview. That team's not good. That team is lacking any cohesion, and you just kind of falter in that way. I think that's a warning. That's a red flag to me. That just is, and I'm a little worried about the Celtics right now.
Yeah, they're 20th in offense since March 1st. They are not getting to the free throw line. They are not getting any offensive rebounds. They just make things hard on themselves, and I think this is a team. I've heard Celtics reporters refer to fake ball movement. With them, and I would also throw in fake spacing. I know that there's a certain benchmark of threes that you have to take in order for teams to care that you have shooting on the floor. But I think especially when they don't have Robert Williams healthy, they fall into bad habits. Your two best players, Jaylen Brown was very good. He got to the basket often, although even he had some maybe bad shot selection given the moment in that second half. But 6 of 20 from 3 for your two best players. I'm more honestly worried about the 20, right? That just doesn't feel like the best way to play, especially with Houston not having a lot of rim protection and then not even having Şengün in this game. So I think when they are just so reliant on, a couple of passes and then a quick three, it kind of takes. Any team could do that, right? It takes what makes them special almost out of the equation, and it just becomes another small ball team, another three-chucking team, which a lot of NBA teams are these days. It makes them a lot less threatening, and you combine that with some bad defense. Again, Robert Williams not being there to protect the basket for them. I mentioned the defense being bad as the thing in my intro there of what the real problem was. The Rockets were getting to the basket whenever they wanted. They got 27 free throw attempts, and the Celtics have an ugly L.
They just don't feel like, I think like the fake, describing their stuff as fake, like feels right. Like that's a very apt.
At its worst, right?
Yeah, and it feels as if like Tatum has been brilliant all year. He's having like a great season. Brown's been great this year, but it doesn't feel like even like the role guys. Like I think like a lot of other teams would have kind of in theory like killed for their depth, right? Like I could tell you like Cleveland would like kill to have Jake hit the bell. Ding ding ding. Are you drinking a Starry right now, Brendon?
No, I'm drinking a LaCroix.
Okay, I was about to be like, what do we
sponsor us?
Yeah, I would love the LaCroix bag. Give me that bag. But like Grant Williams would be playing on like a lot of other teams, and his kind of feel in the rotation right now, and especially against certain opponents, is just different. Like Time Lord's not playing, and he's a really big deal. Like the whole reason their defense kind of kicked up to this historic level in part last year is because Time Lord was like a legit defensive player of the year candidate, and now he just feels like he hasn't been around this year just because of the injury stuff. So everything just feels off. Like you look at these other teams in the East, you look at Milwaukee, I think in particular, but also I think Philly, the momentum is there. The momentum is pushing those teams forward, and Boston just feels like they're not. And I think that's a really weird place to be in March. Maybe it's fake. Maybe they're awesome. There's a lot to still like about it, but something just feels a little off to me.
Well, and we saw them have the opposite season last year, right? So I think it's kind of new where they felt like the team no one wanted to see, the team with all the momentum, all that stuff that gets built up in March and April in the NBA regular season. That all favored them last year. Now it's the opposite. Grant Williams is not playing really. They traded for Mike Muscala to sort of be their Cornette replacement, a little bit more of a steady option than Luke Cornette, and now he is getting DNP. So yeah, it feels like they are scuttling not only just with some bad performances, but just a little bit of an identity crisis at times, especially considering they don't even have injuries really to chalk it up to outside of Robert Williams. Their best guys tend to play. Yeah. And yet it hasn't really mattered. All right, let's get to the next one. And we can. I'll keep going. You interrupt me when you want to. We have Jason Kidd subtweeting a Mavs podcaster in his post-game press conference. A viral tweet going apparently onto Jason Kidd's phone, and him feeling the need to shout that out and criticize that after a loss rather than anything, related to the games. We have Klay Thompson going for 30.5 and the Warriors beating the Suns.
Ding, 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 ding.
And
Let's
we
talk
have
about this.
Okay. All right.
Klay,
Let's talk about it.
This is a follow-up to what we just talked about the other day, Brendon. I can't quit him. I can't quit the Warriors. If Klay's going to do this and just be a flamethrower, and I understand there were some things in that Suns game from the Suns' perspective that didn't go right. I was very apt to like some of the Terrence Ross stuff in particular, and seeing some of maybe he's overthinking things right now and like just kind of not totally settling in. And obviously they don't have KD, but like Klay looks awesome. And again, like he's not going to be throw him on like a big wing or a point guard type in the playoffs anymore. But like this team's recipe is going to be like Draymond leading the defense, the eternal somehow Andre Iguodala taps into like a Lazarus pit and like ascends to like the last version of himself this one last time, and they just score a crap ton of points.
Yeah, we'll see if he gives them anything.
Yeah,
yes,
he's
he
playing.
Did play. That's a step forward. Right?
Abbott Elementary guest star Andre Iguodala, which is an incredible sentence. If you haven't watched that show,
I think that's also like the highlight of what he's been up to this season. Not to be disrespectful, but the man is old. It's a waste of a roster spot. It's just an honorary thing. I actually think the Iguodala part is going to get more scrutiny if they don't have the depth to make it through, because it's like we do this with the Heat, right? Why does Udonis Haslem get a roster spot? It's kind of gone from like a cool thing / joke to like probably could use a better player in that slot, and I wonder if the same thing happens with Iguodala. But yeah, the rest of the guys were awesome. Yeah. This was a vintage Warriors win.
Klay being like this, Klay being a flamethrower like this, and just looking comfortable is so fun. And like their offense is going to be able to go toe-to-toe with teams if they can do this. I don't know who they're getting in the first round. The West is a jumble. But if Klay looks like this, he looks right. Him and Steph is just like good luck. Like good luck really dealing with that, honestly. This is two really nice wins for them. Bucks obviously didn't have Giannis, and then this. These are two really, really nice wins. Did this on the Sun side of this though? Because I think that's the other part of this. Did this raise any like alarm bells for you? Did this like kind of pique your interest in any one way or the other?
It's really hard to judge the role players with the team being minus its best player, right? I mean, that's the easy thing to look at, is that these guys who are supposed to be kind of 5 through 10 on your roster really just did nothing in this game. And you talked about Terrence Ross offensively. I think defensively, he is just in all of these matchups, whether it's Dallas or Milwaukee or Golden State, the best teams, he just has not been able to really hold up. You know, up and down. I think that's really why they lost this game. The Warriors were able to funnel shots, especially late in the game, to players not named Devin Booker, and they were not able to make them. And so that's the problem from the Suns' side of things. They also just got out to an awful start. They were down 20 in the first quarter. But it's just hard for me to say, well, you know, Torrey Craig is the reason they lost, and that's a big red flag, when it's like, well, Torrey Craig's role is going to be dramatically different when he's not playing 30 minutes and starting when Durant is in there. So I don't know. It is a red flag. The way that I kind of put it with the Suns, Chris, is this was a reminder that even with Durant, they probably have 4 proven two-way players on the entire roster. The Warriors have at least 6. And they have guys like Poole and Peyton beyond that who are at the very least specialists, but on their best days also two-way players that can get you to like 8 guys. So yeah, I think this showed why Suns Warriors would be a fun matchup, why it would be no sure thing on either side, and you know why it would probably be one of the more fun things we might actually be able to see in the first round, when you add in the fact Durant still has not played a game in front of Warriors fans since he left the team. So we still have not seen that. I have one more for you, though, Chris, on this what matters most game.
Okay.
Scoot Henderson being shut down for the last 5 games of the Ignite season. This is coming right after, and neither you or I don't think are draft experts, especially because our teams are good this year and we don't have to be. But
I do want to shout out.
This was right after like people were moving were moving Scoot Henderson down, and then he's getting shut down. It's been a weird week for the stuck in cement idea of Wemby, Scoot, and then what? It's kind of changing.
I want to shout out our guy Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Big Board, because he was on this Brandon Miller could be like a top 2 pick thing a couple months ago in his newsletter, which you can check out on Substack. We're going to get him on the show. I'm putting this in ether now. We're going to get him on the show like May, June, because he is like an absolute draft savant, my favorite person to text and ask basketball. Just a good dude too. He was on this, and it makes sense. Like, Miller has the size. Apparently, like, the stuff that happened that is going on at Alabama happened at Alabama just like doesn't matter. Like, that's just like out of the question.
It would appear that way.
It would appear that we've just like moved past that, which okay. I can't help but look at Scoot and just think that that's the guy I would take to. And I'm with you. I don't watch as much draft stuff in that way. Like, I catch these guys later, but I've watched some Ignite stuff. I've seen him in person All-Star last year, and then you see him from time to time now, and like that just looks like an NBA-ready frame. He looks like he's like 25 in terms of his build.
Yeah.
But I could understand teams being like, Brandon Miller has this like wing size that you just can't teach and is so valuable. I mean, it is an advantage to have your big creator or like one of your big offensive options be a guy that can see over defenses like that. It just is. And like, he offers you that, and like, you can't develop that. You can't go in the lab and spend time in the summer working on stuff with your trainer to like get taller and see that stuff, right? Like, you just can't. Yeah. So like, I get it. I'm curious to see like how this will happen over the draft stuff. I get it. I kind of also get Scoot shutting it down. It's a little bit of a bummer. You'd rather just see him play, but I also get it. Like, and I bet you this will be the norm for some of the really good prospects that go this route in the future as well. It makes a lot of logical sense.
I mean, do you think it says that he's okay going 3?
It feels like this is like risk aversion. It feels like when guys go to the combine and just like they don't want to do, like, if guys don't go play 5-5 at the combine, or NFL draft prospects like don't run the 40 or do the cone drill. That's what this feels like to me. Mm-hmm. Where it's just like it's risk aversion.
And yeah, from that standpoint, of course you understand it. I mean, Scoot is the kind of guy, he already played on Ignite last year. If he didn't even play a game this season, we would already still be talking about him as a top 2 prospect, I think. So it makes sense to not get injured and not jeopardize any of that. It just surprised me the timing. Maybe this was always the plan, right? And it didn't really have anything to do with any of the draft board crap that we all talk about. And it was just sort of, hey, we're not going to finish the season this year. We'll revisit in March and figure it out. And that's that. I don't know. But
here's, can I ask
I
you,
will say from...
I have one other thing on this.
Yeah.
There is a difference that, like, they said they're not going to make the playoffs, so those games like don't matter. Brandon Miller is going to play in games that matter. There is like a difference in risk and like what you're going to learn from some of these as well. Like, I don't know if we would have learned anything new about Scoot if he'd played in. I don't know who they're playing, but if they played the Sioux Falls Skyforce or pick a team, the Denver Crew, the Motor City.
That's
Cruise.
the G League team that's the most fun to reference. It's funny that you said that because that's just the one that you have to say when you're pulling one out of your ass. It just has to be the Sioux Falls Skyforce.
Yeah, because it's like the one that they haven't like the Heat, of course, like haven't like moved their team and done like the Dade County like Suns or like the Dade County Heat or like the Vice City like whatever. Like they kept it in Sioux Falls is because it's like Heat culture, baby. Like you got to go to Sioux Falls and work your way up to actually get to live in Miami.
So I think that they actually did that just because it's more fun for all of us to say, if I'm being honest with you. But I think that the point you make is valid. I think the fact that Scoot, I mean, a lot of these games have been against better competition than what college would have given to him, but the team hasn't been very good this year. And so it is, he had the injury in the middle of the year, and then it is somewhat of the Scoot show when he's out there, and there's not a lot of stakes, and the team sort of makeup and like setup around him isn't necessarily maximized. They have a lot of athletes and very young players this year compared to past season. So I don't know. I get it with Miller. He's shooting 51% from 2, 40% from 3. He creates turnovers like a monster. He doesn't turn the ball over very much. And you mentioned the dimensional stuff. He's 6'9" and long, and that archetype is always going to stand out. I have spent time around Scoot, and we can talk about this more as we get closer to the draft, but the institute that I work at ASU has a partnership with Team Ignite. We provide their educational component, or one of their educational components, because they're not going to college. So I've gotten to talk in depth with Scoot at times. I have gotten to know him, see him around in casual environments. That dude, I would bet on 100 times out of 100. And I know I'm biased. I know that I don't know everything about him, but I have more of an insight than probably half these GMs do to Scoot Henderson from a personal standpoint. And I would absolutely make a bet that guy can become what you need him to become and what he needs to become. So I do think that should matter, even if the basketball situation has been weird this year. And let's get to, go ahead.
Just last thing we should say, like maybe this also is like team dependent because like will the Detroit, let's say the Pistons pick second, they have Jaden Ivey who's done a lot of really interesting stuff lately. He's like I think taking a little bit of a step forward. Are they a Scoot team necessarily? Maybe not, and maybe that leads him to Brandon Miller as like another big wing to play with Kate. I think that has to, I think, play a part in like how some of these teams are talking about it. It just can't not.
Even the Rockets or something, right? Like
absolutely.
There isn't sort of that perfect. Not every team is a perfect fit for a guard who ideally has the ball in his hands quite a bit. That is a player type that is less easy to fit, in addition to being sort of more replaceable, quote unquote, than a guy like Brandon Miller or obviously somebody like Victor.
Well,
so
and if the Rockets have James
Harden, it's going to be fascinating.
The Rockets will have James Harden and have
exactly.
Jalen Green. So it's like, what are you supposed to do?
The Harden, Scoot, KPJ, Jalen Green Rockets with Şengün at the 5. They will break records for defensive rating poorness in their first season together. We'll see what happens. We'll obviously see who wins the lottery, and that'll affect a lot of this. I wanted to just get your quick thoughts on this because we've been saving it for a bit. It keeps getting pushed, Chris. But the fact that Team USA here has changed their policy on multi-year commitments as well as these summer mini camps, where compare that to some story some reporting earlier in the year from Joe Varden and others about Team Canada, which is now coached by Nick Nurse, in case people missed that changeover, and could be the best team in the world, depending on who agrees to play for Team USA, not only at the FIBAs this fall, but also at next year's Paris Olympics. Yes, there's already going to be an Olympics again. And they are doing what Jerry Colangelo did in the early 2000s, what the the Redeem Team documentary got on Netflix about the multi-year commitments and really making this into a program, and Coach K bringing American heroes in to talk to everybody and whatever. Like, it seems like Team Canada is really going that build a culture, build a program route, whereas Team USA is getting more lenient. And I don't know if I need to remind people, I think they finished 7th in the last FIBA tournament. They had no real problem in the Olympics, but they were not good in the FIBAs. I don't know if this matters to any American NBA player. I don't know if this matters to any American NBA fan. But this is another budding power here in Canada, in addition to the other ones that we already know.
When people are going to care when they lose.
But did they care in 2019? Because they got their you-know-what handed to them, and it doesn't seem like anyone even remembers. I know we had a pandemic, and like people had some more important stuff to go to care for in their lives, but like they were bad in that FIBAs in 2019.
Yeah, but people cared when they won a bronze medal at the Olympics. It's like a whole generation defining thing for them to like lose in that game. And Brendon, I just think this kind of sucks. Like I think like part of one of my favorite, like, I understand like how complicated it can be, and like this is the truth for soccer maybe more than anything else, where like you're building in international windows, and like I'm sure like every like football director and manager in Europe was like freaking out about their players going to Qatar and like playing in the World Cup and like hoping to goodness that they didn't get injured, right?
Yeah.
And like I understand that if you're like ahead of a team, like where you'd be like, okay, like maybe this just like lessens their workload a little bit, and that's good for me because like it helps me keep my job, it helps us win games and everything. But like in terms of like seeing this built as a program, considering like the fact that there are all these other teams around the world that are like taking this to a different level, not just Canada, but like European countries and other countries developing really strong talent. I think like the commitment, I think the effort you put in, I think all that stuff does add up. And I think like at some point this will probably cost Team USA. Like it just will. Maybe it doesn't happen in the short term, but in the long term, if you keep this up, I think it will. And I think like I also just think about like I remember like a lot, like you listen to guys talk about going up against Kobe in the mini camps and working out in the situations and the scrimmaging and stuff. That stuff made them better. That stuff made you a better player. That stuff made you a better competitor. That helped you learn from guys ahead of you in the league that were older than you when you were a young guy getting to do that. Like I think that's a loss too. Like think about all the young guys that aren't gonna get to maybe go through camps and stuff that they would have benefited from. Like think of someone like Evan Mobley, someone like Devin Booker. I'm sure have really benefited from being around Team USA. I know Kyrie did back in the day. Like Dame, I know did.
Well, I mean they're probably still gonna hold these camps, right? It's just optional now.
Just like,
so what do you do?
It's something. It's not. This isn't the same. If you want guys to play for you and you want to develop like the best version of it in the competition, you need this stuff. I would like love to know what like LeBron or like Carmelo or any of these guys that have been around since like 2004, like what they have to think about this, because like that would maybe change my mind more than it would like about like a younger guy. But I would love to know what the old heads think about this, because I personally just think you're taking away something by going this route. I get why, and maybe this is being pushed by star players saying like I need rest.
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious to see. I mean, the name that comes to mind, number one, not only because he's been around for so long, but also because he's eventually going to need to be replaced and can't be relied upon, is Kevin Durant. You know, he has been the guy that I think they don't win the Olympics in 2020 without him. He was really the only that caliber player. There also are fewer and fewer of the best players in the NBA who are American, and that evolution is going to be fascinating. But, you know, I don't think it's going to ruin Team USA or that they're going to have some sort of crisis on their hands, but it is a major change, and it is something that at one point we thought was the key to creating a dominant team, and now we are going into some uncharted territory under Grant Hill here. I want to tell people who's on Team Canada, because that's part of why I'm so fascinated by it. The talent is stacked. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, RJ Barrett, Lou Dort, I believe Andrew Wiggins is, he's obviously Canadian. I don't think he has checked the boxes of these new requirements that they're putting into place. So
Correct.
there's a little bit of uncertainty if he will play, right? Zach Edey, who is about to potentially lead Purdue to a deep run in the NCAA tournament. And then some role players, Dylan Brooks, Kelly Olynyk, guys like that. So that already shows you how legit it is. Nick Nurse is a very good coach. I just think that is going to be very formidable. And I do think when you talk about caring, maybe it will take losing the Olympics for people to really worry, really care, really react. But I do think potentially the proximity part of this, where it's a country that has an NBA team, it is recognizable names and faces. It's not one Euro guy and a bunch of people we've never heard of rolled out around him. It is people we know and care about, and a country that's right next to us. I could see that dynamic or rivalry affecting all of this. And I think from a Team USA standpoint, to transition to our next thing, not to lump another NBA story onto this particular player, but I think that there is a very open Ja Morant question about Team USA.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, because he would be the obvious player. Him and Zion, although Zion, I would be more than understanding if he never set foot on a FIBA or Olympic court, because I think he only has so many minutes in him, and I don't necessarily think he should be spending them on this. But
Sure.
Ja being the guy, right, who you would think, well, if he joins, that is part of how you replace Kevin Durant. Devin Booker's already there. Bam Adebayo's already there. Some of these other guys. So we can transition to him, and not that that's anywhere near the biggest priority for him, but it is connected here. It is his future is part of this, right?
Well, and the other thing is, with just the last thing on the Ja with Team USA thing, is like Darius Garland is in the same class as him, has already participated in Team USA. And whether that matters to the next regime, he's already been in that program. He's already gone through all of it, and like maybe that matters to him, saying, "Hey, you showed us a commitment earlier. You were around. Like we kept you around in the lead up to that to this stuff when you made an impression on us. Maybe that matters. Maybe maybe Ja's just so good that it doesn't matter. But like it's like Darius Garland is like a bad player. It's like, okay, you don't want to show up, do the work. That's fine. That could matter.
Yeah, I think it will for the young players. I think really the guidelines changing here is probably just a way to open the door for more of the superstars to just check in a month before the Olympics and get to compete, rather than feeling like they have to jump through a million hoops. But for young players, I do think the track record matters. Like Mikal Bridges is a guy. He went to the mini camp 2 years ago. No one thought he was going to make the team, but I got to interview him about it, and he was thrilled that he got that opportunity, and he had an awesome experience, got to be around different basketball minds and other players and different ways that guys do things. And then you come out of that not only better and well off for it, but you also show the program guys like Grant Hill or head coach Steve Kerr, whatever, who are old school guys, even if they are younger than Jerry Colangelo, right? But like they're going to care, the coach is going to care, of course. So we'll have to see. Ja Morant. He is checked in, depending on where you see it. We don't know when. I don't think he checked into the counseling program that he is at in Florida the day that the reports came out, because you've seen some subsequent stuff that he might have already been there. Taylor Jenkins, I guess, confirmed it with a head nod, Chris, is what the indication seems to be. But he also left the door open for Ja to potentially return after the 4 games that they have ruled him out for already, which I believe ends later this week. So I feel like that is soon. If you're telling me he's at a retreat-like counseling program in Florida to just jump into the starting lineup for an NBA basketball game less than a week later. But I guess that is a possibility, and we now know sort of how he's spending his time away from the team rather than the very vague statement that was put out before.
I have no interest in seeing him play for like a while. I really don't. I am very, very interested to see how they handle this. The way Taylor Jenkins has talked about it has been very much like there was a press release written, and I'm reading these words, and they almost just sound like you're reciting them and prepping them, which makes sense, but like they don't sound like a response that is like, hey, like I'm reacting to this in real time with you. You can read between the lines how you want to. We're not going to, I think, talk about that because that's not really fair to kind of do in a public setting like this. I just don't like if he plays in a week. I just think that's going to be weird. I think this whole situation is unprecedented in a lot of ways. I don't really know what to make of it in a lot of ways. You obviously hope the human being is okay at the end of this more than anything else. And I'm sure like there is some responsibility felt to the team in wanting to come back and stuff, but boy, seeing him play like in a week or seeing him play like whenever, it just feels weird to me, you know? Just with everything that has gone on, with everything kind of out there, it feels weird.
All right, so Ja Morant is an undetermined. We don't know what's going to happen. I think what you said was very well put. We just wanted to check in on that story, Chris. But the main topic of today's show, let's get right to it. These NBA veteran standouts. I don't know of a better way to put it, because what we're going to debate here or talk through, Chris, is whether it is truly the best season of their careers. But statistically, there are a lot of players around the NBA that you can go to where the box scores, their basketball reference page, whatever the case may be, would tell you they're having the best season they've ever had in their life. And I think it's an interesting way to look at what the league sort of is right now. The players that you and I, these are only a few. I feel like we bumped around a few more than this. Damian Lillard, De'Aaron Fox, Jimmy Butler, Kristaps Porzingis. You brought up Zach LaVine as an example. I brought up Devin Booker as an example. When we were talking before we were about to record, I was watching, we were talking about the Bucks game earlier, Bucks Kings. I think Jrue Holiday could be put on this list.
Yeah.
A first-time All-Star for the first time in years. Since I think 11 years ago, Jrue Holiday was last an All-Star, and now here he is again. So who do you want to start with? I think Jimmy Butler, if I didn't say that, yeah, he's on here too. Who do you want to start with in this group that kind of indicates or highlights exactly the phenomenon that we're talking about here?
So I want to start with Dame, because I think he's been the best player on this list. I think we should start them. I think he's having an incredible run. I think he's having one of the very best seasons of anyone in the league. I think this is probably the best season of Dame's career in a lot of ways. 32.1 points per game. He's averaging 7.3 assists. He's at 57.8% on twos. That's the best mark of his career by far. His true shooting percentage is up near 65%. And this is, Brendon, this is kind of a through line to like all four of these guys. But Dame has like adjusted his game in a way that like is very Hooper friendly, but it's also very nerd friendly. The nerds have won in this case with these guys. Like the ways these guys are playing is very analytically friendly. It is very modern. He's initiated contact at a really high rate. He's his by far career high in free throws. He's taking 11.3 threes per game. And he's like absolutely just killing it from there. Most notably, he's at 37.4% on pull-ups, which is like launching a flamethrower at opposing defenses. Like that's now like one of the most horrifying shots in basketball if it wasn't already. And that's over at 7 attempts per game. It's a 7% percentage increase from last year, which he's just being way, way more accurate on those shots for whatever reason. And he's tied for his career low in the percentage of his shots that are long mid-rangers. So he's still taking some of them. It's like 9%, but he's cut them down a little bit. He is so efficient. He's playing up to everything you could want. And it's I think, Brendon, maybe the most impressive thing is that this is like a great way for Dame to age. Initiating contact, savvy, pull-up threes that are still going to be hard to guard. Like, this is like an evolution of Dame to me to some degree. It's like the best version of him and everything he's already good at. But this is a way, I think, for him to kind of continue to be awesome as he kind of hits the next couple years of his career and whatever is going to come next in Portland.
I think whatever's going to come next in Portland is kind of an interesting part of this when you talk about him aging and what his game is going to look like, because
sure,
I didn't know if he was capable of this, right? And if you're telling me that he's going to be able to still do this, and maybe that season last year where he missed a lot of it was for the better. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say, like, you know, Curry had one of those and he came back very good. I don't know if that's related or unrelated, but I could see it helping him physically. I just look at Lillard. He actually has had seasons, I was just looking while you were talking, where he's taken more pull-up threes per game than this. The 2 seasons the two COVID seasons, basically, the one that led in and the one that was very shortened afterward with the 72 games, were both 7.6 and 8.1 threes off the dribble per game, and he was as efficient or better. So we've kind of seen that. We're seeing more assisted threes for him, which is interesting considering he did play with McCollum. I think that this roster is fine. I think it's different. Obviously, there is no CJ. Simons has missed a lot of time recently. But the reason I put all that context there and kind of try to place the roster part of it around him and everything else is, it kind of comes back. We talked about this with Adam Mares, right? And it's been on my mind since of like, is Dame, it's incredible that he's able to do this. That is an achievement. Is it good that he has to? Is it good that the burden is so heavy on him, especially as they're supposed to be reformulating and figuring out something new? That's where I wonder. And I also think, well, could he have always done this, but he just had CJ McCollum, and maybe that was actually a better mix for him to have another scorer like that? Or is this something where you really would be able to say, okay, for at least a couple more years, we could get this from Lillard. What should we build off of that? I don't know. It's fascinating for Portland because we always just put it as, is Lillard staying? Okay, great. Now they're going to keep winning. But like, you got to build something that makes them better. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't hit on this, and this is, I think, part of the unfortunate part for Dame that he's having this season, and like they might not make the playoffs.
Yeah,
they might not. This team isn't very good. This team is stuck in a certain place. There's a lot of really young pieces. Like Simons is interesting. Like they have Shaedon Sharpe is interesting. Like they have things that you like, but it's like Yusuf Nurkic is not like particularly good anymore, and he's like their starting center and owed a bunch of money going forward, and like they're gonna pay Jeremy Grant like a bunch of money, and it's tricky and it's not fun. And like I think in an optimal scenario, like he would have like there's maybe like a version of the CJ to Pelicans trade that's obviously more high profile, but like gets him somewhere where he could have evolved in a certain way and done something else. He's not having to do this just to kind of keep this team afloat.
Yeah.
That doesn't take away from the fact that like I think what he's doing is like incredibly impressive, and there's not many guys alive that I think could do some of the stuff he's doing, right? But certainly I don't think it's unfair to look at this and also say like, you know what, like should he have to do this? Is it best for him? Is it best for like whatever his goals are for him to have to do this? The answer is probably no. I think most of the time the answer is probably no. Should the guy have to play this maximalist level to kind of make his team kind of function?
Well, and that's the thing is like I think that conversation gets had a lot, right? About, well, should he want to be traded? Should he get traded? All that. I almost think about it in terms of just like the Blazers. I don't think that they're... I understand that they have financial constraints that are very obvious based on how they operate. They're not going to be a team that's going to spend a ton of money and mortgage the future and do all that. We're not going to see a Rudy Gobert trade from this franchise. That's understandable. I think the Nurkic contract and some of these other things hampered them. Yeah, it's smart. I don't think it's the wrong decision, but I also think you have to nail the ones you do make, and they just haven't. And so you get this season where, on the one hand, you're thrilled that you just extended this guy. He's getting into his 30s, and he can still do this. But it does start to open up some other questions. The guy that inspired this for me, Chris, is Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. And I think he's really,
the right pairing. He's the right pairing with Dame.
He is, because he's a veteran. It's a little bit unexpected, right? And I think it's a couple things from Jimmy. You mentioned the twos with Lillard. It's similar here too. 55.1%, by far a career best for Butler. I think he's a little bit in. He has like a career low in turnovers right now. I think he might be close to a career high in steal percentage. Some of the other stats also, it's not just the twos, but that's the one that jumps out. I think the other one though is he is playing a lot more games than he has in recent seasons. He's healthy right now. If he were to finish the season, he would blow out of the water some of his recent games played totals. And meanwhile, just like with Portland, the Heat are just not really benefiting all that much. Maybe they are. Maybe they would be just like awful without him. But he is not having this type of season on a team where if they had come back from last year's Eastern Conference Finals and you said Butler's going to be even better in the regular season, you'd have been like, wow, the Heat might make the finals. They might be back in the championship series. That is not the case. They've been substantially worse than last year, despite getting this from Butler.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the way to go with this for me with Butler is just like how much worse is the team if he's 10%? How much worse is Miami if he's 10% worse? Or if he misses 5 more games? His team is already not that good.
Yeah.
They're not. They're going to be like, they're going to get Boston or something in round 1. They're probably going to be really annoying, and then they're going to go home. That's probably where this is headed with Miami, right? But it won't because of Jimmy. There was just an ESPN feature, I think, by Nick Friedel about, like, the standard of Jimmy and winning and, like, all this stuff. And it's cliche and, like, all that stuff. But, like, that's what Jimmy is. Jimmy is, like, one of the most competitive guys in the league. He will drag you into dogfights. They are just annoying to play basically every night they're out. But, like, in a season where, like, Kyle Lowry's missed a ton of time and is not Kyle Lowry in the way that you would want anymore, and, Jimmy can only drag you so far.
Yeah.
When, like, not a lot of other stuff is it. Like Kevin, like, when you sign Kevin Love off the scrap heap and he's a buyout and start him and he's not good like that, you're looking for answers. You're searching for solutions. And, like, they just don't have enough solutions around Jimmy. Jimmy's been awesome. He should be, like, in the All-NBA running, I think. He's having just, like, an insane season across the board. He's, like, 30, like, for him, he's, like, at 33.7% on threes, which is, like, for him, like, a great number. It's his best Miami number by far. 55.1% in twos. That's the best number of his career. 85.1% from the line. He's guaranteed to get just like a bunch of free throws every single night. And if it's a big game, he's going to get like 15. As annoying as people may find like the Jimmy free throw merchant stuff, that's like, it's a skill for him. He's awesome at it. And it makes him.
Well, and when you're stronger than everybody, like wouldn't we all? I mean, it's not like it's cheap, right?
Yeah,
it's just
100%.
like he's a physical, strong dude and he uses it to his advantage.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you. I love Jimmy. Jimmy
Yeah.
Butler is one of like my absolute favorites. I love the competitor. I love the ethic. I love just everything about what he kind of brings. Like one of my favorite things from the noted Jersey retirement hater that I am, I really love that he flew out there. I thought that was awesome that he
For
just
Pau?
like he had a game the next night. And he flew out to go see Pau, and he like sees Pau's wife, and he sees his family, says hi, took a Pau jersey back with him.
Yeah.
Right? Like he took a Pau Laker jersey because he's like that. Like I love everything Jimmy is about, and he like is dragging this team to whatever it is. Him and Bam, but I think more so Jimmy are what drags his team there.
He's been vocal about his frustration recently too, which makes this an interesting time to talk about him because he has started to just be open with the media about, the grind of trying to do this and putting so much on my back and just a normal season, even if it was not his best season. It's exhausting, it's tiring, and when he doesn't feel like the grind is leading to anything fruitful, it gets pretty exhausting, and I think that opens up some questions about where he'll go. But part of the big picture conversation I think that drew us to this topic, Chris, was just what does it say about these players, one, but what does it say about the league and NBA basketball right now as a secondary thing? And it's easy to say these guys are having these seasons because of the era we're in, the offensive efficiency being off the charts, the spacing, the pace, all that stuff. I think there's one guy on this list that I absolutely do chalk it up to that with. But Butler, what's fascinating is the Heat are one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA. They never were like the most spaced out team because they always have Bam. Even Jimmy, when he's off the ball, doesn't really, space the floor a ton in terms of, running off screens and really demanding defensive attention in that way. And yet he's having this incredibly efficient shooting season without a lot of space to operate in. And so I think this one is probably the most real thing that I find here because yes, it's more responsibility than he should need, but it's kind of the answer to the question I think a lot of us have had when we've looked at it and said, what would a Jimmy season be where he just played at playoff Jimmy level or close to it all year? And we're kind of seeing what that looks like, which is crazy.
Yeah, and like I think it's like him and Shea are kind of proof that like you don't need to be a 3-point guy only to be super successful. Like it helps. 3 is worth more than 2, but like these guys have found a lot of success with footwork, with size, with strength, with knockdown shot making ability to kind of have these really hyper efficient, really good seasons by doing this. And Jimmy he's stronger than like most any wing who's going to guard him. Even like the big, really good defensive wings, he is going to like make them absolutely like have to burn a ton of energy defending him. And it's also just like in a different scenario, it would be so easy to see him scaled up and see it like maybe like a more distributor heavy version of Jimmy, where like I'm saying Jimmy like I know him, but
Butler's a generic last
like
name. You can't, with guys like it's like when people like Mike Breen will always call LeBron James, like blocked by James, like the iconic call. Wrong. It's weird. It's like who?
Yeah, but
is there a guy named James out there?
Only good. Yeah, it's the only good time that's ever been used. That's why I call Harden Big Jim. Harden's just Big Jim in my head. Butler like scaled up as like a hey we're gonna surround you with like a bunch of shooting, and like him plus Bam plus like a ton of shooting would just be like incredible if they just had like one like other two-way kind of wing,
kind of what they were last
shooting
year,
and like or right like a younger kind of like more sustainable version of that. Like if you pop Jimmy like pick a team, like you could pick other teams in the league where like
the Celtics.
It's like funny because it's like I think right where it's like it's funny because I would think like it'll obviously never happen, but like Cat is such like a fun big man pairing with him from a basketball perspective, but like
sure that didn't go well.
That clearly just like that didn't go well. But if you put him in a bunch of different scenarios that there's just a bunch of shooting and you surround him with it, like I think you could do something really interesting just kind of with that as a team building model. And Miami could retool in that way and be successful. It's just like it's going to take like turning Duncan Robinson into like a guy who can play basketball in 2023.
Yeah, and I think on the other side, him and Bam are such an awesome defensive identity to build around. But then offensively, I don't think anyone would say it's like the best fit ever for the two of them. So like in a factory, in a lab, if you could build it out, that probably wouldn't be what you would do. So it's funny. It's just, you make the best of what you are. Last year, we would have felt like it was perfect. Some of their shooting falls off and we feel a little differently, but Butler's been the constant kind of pusher there. Speaking of doing it a lot from three. Okay,
can I pitch you?
Yes, pitch me.
I want to, this is going to be the first Just Sports like show that we launch when Jimmy Butler retires. Okay. I want to just send him for a week to like the most dysfunctional like teams we can find, and he gets to like whip them into shape for a week. It's the
Gordon Ramsay restaurant show where he goes to like poorly run little mom and pop kitchen shops, cafes, and just yells at them, but it's basketball. That's the pitch. Yeah, we got to go to Fox for this, I think. Bar rescue, exactly.
Yeah, bar
Same
rescue.
Type of thing.
It's bar rescue, but Jimmy Butler. And like the first team would be like, we're sending Jimmy Butler to the Houston Rockets.
Ooh, basketball rescue. I think we've landed on a name here, and I think that he could get sent to the Washington Wizards, which is where I was going. This is exactly what I was talking about. So Kristaps Porzingis was one of the first people who came to mind with this topic for me, Chris, because he scored a career-high 43 last week, so he's kept it going. He had a very strong start to the season. I decided to check back in with Washington, one of the teams that I hate watching most in the entire NBA, and I was reminded of why. And I don't want to discredit his season, but it reminds me back to the Celtics conversation we had at the beginning of fake ball movement and fake spacing, or put a different way, the regular season like superpower that is playing 5-out basketball. They do start Daniel Gafford, but they'll have Porzingis at the 5 a lot. Gafford is often just a roll man, and it's 4-out with that, whatever the case may be. I don't feel like just watching the Wizards does not feel like they have much of a plan, does not feel like they play particularly hard on any given night, and they kind of just get a ton of shots up. And what sucks is they have talent, and Porzingis is one of the guys that has a lot of talent. And I just watch these stats. He's in a contract year. They don't have a very good defense. They don't have a very winning pedigree as a team, and it feels pretty empty, if I'm being completely honest. And it bums me out because I think it's a good story if Porzingis can get on to a better team and make good on the promise that we all know he has, but this is not that, despite what the stats would tell you.
No, I agree. Like, this team isn't good. I think it's really interesting to see, like, he's another guy where, like, I went and read a NBC Sports DC thing about him, and it was like he's changed his game about how he's looked, and it's like the SEO is how analytics have evolved Kristaps Porzingis game, Wizards. Like, this is like he has changed his game to fit the modern NBA, and like he's also in a contract situation. Like, I believe he can be a free agent this summer if I'm not mistaken, and like that. He's probably looking and say, okay, what can I parlay myself into to maybe like be this version of me and go somewhere else and like maybe win some basketball games and play at a higher level and kind of fulfill my promise in that way. I don't know what that looks like. Cap space can be a little bit weird. I don't know how much money he's looking for, but
well, that's the question that I have. That's the question that I have is, and we talk about this era and how people play and how teams are designed, and in the Wizards' case, what does it take in 2023 to be mediocre, which seems like their primary goal every season. They don't really aspire to much more than that, it doesn't seem like, and they don't allow themselves to ever get worse than that. And I feel like you can just be mediocre very easily in the NBA these days if you have enough shooting and you have enough offensive talent and you don't turn the ball over and do things like that. You're going to be fine. You're going to be in the play-in mix, and that's what they are. Porzingis plays no defense. He doesn't even really appear to be interested in doing that most nights, and I don't necessarily even blame him because I don't know if the other four guys on the floor really are either. This is just, it's bizarre to say because it's really not from a production standpoint. It's a contract year paradise. Just ask Kyle Kuzma, right? But it's from a basketball situation, I think it's pretty bad. I don't know if I'm a front office executive looking at Kristaps Porzingis this summer. I guess he's proven he can be healthy. He's proven he can make shots. He's expanded his game a little bit in some of the ways you talked about. He's better from mid-range this year, etc. But are you like chomping at the bit to get this version of Porzingis onto your team? What championship team is he going to come to based on how he's playing now? And you're going to be like, all right, final piece. We got it.
Yeah, and that's also just because of the money he's making. Like, I think of him and Nikola Vucevic is sort of like similar in that way. It's like, I like these players. They're obviously very skilled. There's things they do really, really well, and they're better than some of the other options you have as far as centers go. But you're also in this position where like it's like they have these liabilities, and like the scalability of their game is like an open question. And like, how specialized does your roster need to be to build with them? I'm curious to just see, Brendon, like what you think. What do you think would be like the right, if you could put Porzingis on like a good team right now or a team with aspirations? Like, do you have one that kind of comes to mind? I have two.
The only one, because I was thinking about this watching him today and prepping for this, I feel like the only one I could really come up with would be the Celtics, being in that Horford role. But that's not a perfect fit. So what are the two that you had?
Well, so I kind of I expanded this to be like other teams that are like that I think he would fit better and then have maybe higher aspirations than the Wizards seems to have. Yes. So I went Portland. Okay. Because I think like you could just do some offensive stuff, and the defensive stuff there, I'm not going to deny that would be a huge problem. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that like that's great because it's like a Grant Porzingis like 4-5 is just like asking to get like roasted, and I'm acknowledging that. But like offensively, I think like it could be interesting. I think him and Bam could be kind of interesting if you were to go that route. Miami desperately needs just like any kind of stuff from their 4 spot. They need a
and
shooter
they've made it work
spot.
with like Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk, who are not going to really be defensive difference makers either. So that's a good call.
Like say like, hey, Porzingis, go to Miami. You play like you be our Al Horford in a lot of ways. Like, you're not going to be as good defensively, but we believe you can give us more offensive juice, and Bam's going to cover for you defensively, and like you're going to get easy threes because Jimmy's going to create for you. That to me would be like would make a ton of sense from a basketball fit. He also, like, honestly, the other one that I'm just thinking about it, the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, they like players like that.
Really long.
You know what it reminds me of is the conversation we had about Markkanen. Because one of the things that I think you and I both were excited about when we went back and like dug in on him is, yes, he's a great shooter, and yes, he has figured out how to get open, making shots at a higher level, all that stuff. But he has also figured out how to continue to incorporate his physicality and size into the way that he plays. That's part of why. I mean, he's also not quite as tall as Porzingis, and I do understand asking somebody who's 7'3" to defend in the modern NBA is hard no matter what. But Markkanen has figured out a way to be able to guard a lot of these guys. He doesn't really like stand out defensively in a really bad way, and I just think that's the difference between what Porzingis could be and what he is right now. Is you just can't be 7'3" and not guard in any situation. Like, you just have to find a team where he can have his role simplified and protect the rim and do his thing. Like maybe the Bucks in place of Brook Lopez. That could be another example, with Giannis.
Yeah, I think the thing is he's never going to hold it defensively in that way.
Yeah, well,
and that's where.
So then, what is he? I mean, is he just destined to be on mediocre teams forever? Is that the future? Because I mean, there's guys like that. It's kind of like, rude to say. I would never tell them that to their face, but we've seen a lot of careers like that, right?
Are him and Levine kind of like two guys like this, like two different heights, obviously, but like the Spider-Man meme, like pointing at each other?
Yeah, they kind of are. I think that can be a good way to transition because you had Levine and you had De'Aaron Fox. I'll let you go off on either one of those. The last one that I had on my list was Jrue Holiday, who I do want to mention because he's pretty similar here in a lot of the trends that we're talking about. He's at not a career best in twos, but 54%, and just making shots at a level that I don't think he had been, including at the free throw line, and then upping his assist game.
So the three he hit, they lost that game, but the three he hit to respond to Curry in Golden State was just like, I love Jrue. He is like, he's one of my favorites because he's just like going to do something reckless like once a game. And I'm just like, I respect the boldness of it. Let me ask you this just kind of on the Jrue thing, because I think he's worth talking about. And this is something I meant to ask you during the Dame conversation as well, as like kind of a sidebar on it. So those guys I think are to different levels in the All-NBA conversation, right? Is Dame's All-NBA I think he has to be on one of the three teams, but is his first team candidacy impacted for you based on their record compared to other candidates?
I think that it is, but not by a ton. Like, I just think we know the roster around him is so bleak that it can't be penalized that much. I also think Dame is somebody where he at least has the benefit of, we've seen him do it on winning teams before. I think that the times when I punish it is for young players on bad teams where maybe they start to have success individually before the team success kind of follows. And it's like, well,
sure,
did you really do that? Or, but with Lillard, it's like, we know what the value is. He's at like the top of a lot of these EPMs and BPM stuff too, which shows that the impact is there. So I don't think I would penalize him. But Jrue's been awesome when Giannis hasn't been out there. He's really held up their team and gotten some big wins where it's like really just him as far as an offensive initiator goes.
All NBA guards is going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah.
I think I have.
It was last year.
I want to check myself. It's just such a deep pool. I had a tweet the other day that I want to because I said this publicly, so I need to verify what I said to make sure I'm going to hold myself accountable here. That's what we do here on the Just Basketball Show. I think I have 5 guys that I feel. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Holiday's case is a lot of the winning that they did without the Bucks, or that the Bucks did without Giannis. And you mentioned pull-up threes with a lot of these guys. This is the most pull-up threes that Holiday's ever taken, which is a defense-bending type of shot that you have to develop in the modern NBA if you're going to be a guard and create offense. He's attempting the most of them he has in his career, and he's at 36%. So he's improved in these key ways. His assists, like I just said, I think are a career high. He's demonstrably gotten better, and he helped them win when a lot of players wouldn't be able to. But I don't feel like he's going to make it.
No, I don't think he is either. Which is that just speaks to the talent pool. Here would be here are my 5 guys I think I have to be on there right now. Tell me if I'm nuts about this. And the 6th guy that I think I would have in there right now is De'Aaron Fox. Okay, so we can go to him next. Luka and Dame, Donovan Mitchell and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and James Harden.
Yeah, I think we did this when we were talking about the Kings because you brought up Fox, and I still feel like I would have if Curry plays at this level and doesn't miss another game, I think he has to be a part of that conversation, and I would probably push Harden down a little bit in that.
Yeah, or if like SGA just like takes some time off,
Sure.
Maybe goes to France and like sees Victor Wembanyama play or something, or just like is at the Ghost Hotel in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, right. Becomes one of the ghosts.
He's like, hey, have you read Boomtown? He's like, have you read Boomtown? There's a lot of cool stuff in Oklahoma City. I'd be like, yes, I have read Boomtown. What a great book.
I have not. I would be answering no to that question. Never read.
Okay, Brendon, I'll be Brendon on the side. Hit me your address. I'm gonna mail you my copy because it is one of the best basketball books I've ever read, and it's also like about a city, and it's insane, and you need to read it.
I will, and I hope Shea has. But give me your Fox thoughts to get us out of here, because he's pretty good example of a lot of these trends too.
Yeah, so we hit on this the other day, but like 57.9% on twos, 32.9 on threes, 78% at the rim, which is just like beautiful stuff. He has obviously his speed and the body control is a really big deal in terms of him navigating half court. So I think the body control in particular is really nice. Like to go back to the Knicks game from like a week ago, there's some incredible finishes and craft in the lane from Fox that I think is really worth highlighting. But like they did a really smart thing in terms of roster construction for him, which is Sabonis plus a lot of shooting makes his life so much easier. They have set him up to be successful. It is not like 1-to-1. So I don't mean it kind of like this, but it's like when in the NFL, it's like they have a quarterback and they set up the offense to be like very quarterback friendly and like give him like a lot of play action and check downs and like build in a structure. I think the Kings, with the way they built the roster, built a structure that is perfectly suited for De'Aaron Fox. And he's feasted, and he deserves credit for maximizing the opportunity. But like with all the shooting, with all the length, with Sabonis as like a screener and kind of the hub and kind of a guy that unlocks some things, it is another chess piece. Like he's really feasted in that regard, and it's because the Kings like embraced like so much of the positives of the modern NBA, I think.
Yeah, I mean they're the through line to the 7 seconds or less Suns or those Don Nelson Warriors or whatever those teams you look at, right? They have the playmaking five, they have the point guards, head of the snake who can push the pace and get into the lane and kick out and all that stuff. I wonder for you, was this something we didn't talk about the other day when we went long on the Kings that is a question for me, which is, do you think that his lack of ability to shoot threes will burn them at all in the playoffs, or do you think he's just figured out how to make up for that himself and that nasty first step, the craft inside? Yes, it'll affect how teams guard him, but he's going to have an answer for it, because I think you could go either way.
I'm tending to be an optimist and think he's going to figure it out, particularly in the right matchups. Like I think like if they get like Dallas in round one, I don't really have like a huge concern that he's not going to be able to figure that out. Like, is Kyrie staying in front of him? Probably not. If they get Golden State, honestly, like this version of Clay is probably not containing Fox off the bounce in the way you kind of hope. But you get into like some of these teams with like real like. It's like hypothetically, like if I kind of want to go back and rewatch it just to watch how he defended him, but like Jrue is like absolutely like a guy that I think could kind of will him into some really tough situations. Like anyone with like a strong point of attack, like the guile of Chris Paul, like maybe gets him in like some weird situations, or like Chris
Paul cannot
like
stay in front of De'Aaron Fox.
Okay, I'm trying to give the point guard some credit. Okay, but does KCP as like a longer, bigger wing, like kind of give him?
You know who I think would is I think if they played Memphis in the second round, Dylan Brooks guarding him and then rim protection at the basket, that would be interesting.
Well, Dylan Brooks also is like liable to like get in a fight with De'Aaron Fox. So like,
well, great. I mean, De'Aaron Fox had some words after the Giannis Lyles Lopez kerfuffle. Yeah. So I think Fox would match the noise.
A lot of choking in the NBA lately.
Yeah, you just blew right past that in the what matters most. I feel like two separate instances of just like hand around the neck on an NBA court was a pretty big one. But I think that's all we wanted to get to today. The league is genuinely more talented. I just think we have a lot of these conversations about the evolution, Chris, and like a lot of the time I come back to like, yeah, but these guys are awesome.
Is your answer that Fox, though, just on the record, so we're even here? Do you think Fox, like, do you have the same answer as me that it is kind of matchup dependent, but you trust that a lot of it he'll be able to do a lot?
I think he'll be fine because I think like the Suns the other night had him scouted well. Josh Okogie is a Dillon Brooks type, and in the end of the game they were doing everything they could to just switch him off. But in the beginning, you saw Okogie. Fox wants to get to the floater more so than he really wants to get all the way to the basket a lot of the time, or if there is going to be a rim protector like Ayton, he's comfortable, and that's kind of his default. They had that scouted. Okogie blocked him once. They knew that was coming. He was trying to draw charges on that, and then Fox just figured it out. Like, I just think he's not in year 3, right? He's in like 6 or 7, and I just think he has a lot of this stuff figured out. I also think he makes threes enough. It's not like he's 22%. He's like 33. So... Yeah, and then you mentioned, he has more space to work with than like almost any point guard in the NBA, and they play so fast that they're not even really having to score against the set defense all that often. So, yeah, I think he's going to be fine. I think him and Sabonis are both going to produce offensively the same way they have. I think them as a team are. It's just the other end.
Yeah, I think that's right. I very excited. Should Josh Okogie like brand himself when he wants a new contract as like Dillon Brooks but nicer?
Sure, they've both had to wear face masks in recent seasons. They both draw charges. They both... Yeah, but Okogie's nicer. I don't even think he's even in double-digit technical fouls, let alone already getting to the suspension.
Probably not. Josh Okogie is like Dillon Brooks, who doesn't describe hitting someone in the nuts as like extending his arm. I don't know if you saw that quote in that Big East and Dillon Brooks feature, but he was just like, my arm rotated. And I'm like, sure it did, Dylan. Sure it did.
Kogi doesn't wear weird WWE outfits to games. There's a lot of differences.
He does.
There's a lot of differences.
How much would you need to get? How much would someone need to pay you to rock the Dillon Brooks like leather open chest vest and jorts look? I would need like a lot of money.
I would need a lot of money, and I would need a lot of time because I would need to work on some things physically before I made the leap into doing that.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, so maybe like a nice gym membership plus like a check might be my negotiation there.
Like Orange Theory and like several $100,000. Yeah,
exactly. Yes, maybe the salary Brooks gets. I'll take that. All right, that'll wrap us up for the week. Thank you for listening to the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media as well. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you are, we are. A big thanks to Dylan Heiser and Jake Stevens for producing this show. And we'll catch you guys next week.